Hello YouTube, and welcome to another vacuum cleaner review from me, Steve. Today we're going to be talking about Dyson, and this one is the Dyson DC04. Now this is quite an old machine. This came around about 15 years ago now. They came out in about 1999 I believe. They were strictly the replacement for the DC01, which was Dyson's very first bagless upright. Now in 1997 I believe he had released another upright called the DC03, which wasn't based on this sort of style. I have one of those upstairs and I probably will be reviewing one of those at a later date, but for today we're going to be talking about this one. Now these were extremely popular back in the day, and indeed you can still buy them on eBay now. They are going round and round as refurbished models galore. You can still get them, people still like them. My opinion on this one is I do think it's a good machine. Other people might disagree and think that later models are better, but I personally thought that Dyson did all his best models at the very beginning. And when you look at this one, this is the limited edition, and it's in the most, Dyson always seemed to use the most lurid colour schemes that were absolutely, they would stand out from the crowd, and the colours were what made Dyson's so unique and different to everything else. I find that nowadays he's very much dumbed down on the colour schemes, and everything seems to be all the same looking. You know, they're rather boring now, to be quite honest, but back in the day when this was made, they came in all kinds of different colours, and quite frankly this one here, I'm demoing this one because it's my favourite colour scheme. I do have the DeStijl upstairs, but I do actually prefer the purple and magenta colour that this one is. I believe that it was launched for some kind of charity. They did have the marking on the bottom, but this one appears not to have it on. It's like when Dyson did the DC07 pink version, it was commissioned for CLIC, cancer research I think, cancer and leukemia in children. But this one, it was for another charity. I can't remember which one it was though. I'm sure people might put it in the comments below what the charity was that this one was associated with, because I know the DeStijl was associated with the Dutch artist DeStijl, who used the famous block colour schemes and everything, and so Dyson decided to model his cleaners after some of those colours. But there we go, that's like a brief history of this machine. They come in two different variants. You have the clutch model and you have the non-clutch model. Now the one that was most popular was the clutch model. This was the second upright that it featured on. The DC01 didn't feature brush control. It first appeared on the DC03, and this one carried it on again. And what we see on the bottom here is a very familiar type of floor head that carried on running for absolutely years. Dyson used this style of floor head on the DC07, which followed on from this one. He used it on the DC14, and then it carried on again on the same type of floor head as this on the much later DC33, which was launched in the late 2000s. Okay, so this machine, it's to pick up, it's fairly heavy. I don't know the exact weight of this, but I would estimate it's somewhere around the region of about 8 kilos with the cable attached. It's got all its tools, this one. I bought this one second hand as a non-worker off eBay a couple of years back, and it was in a right state. It didn't work, so I paid £5 for it. I went to fetch it, and I discovered when I got it back home that it suffered from the classic problem these machines have, is that the cable had broken internally on this joint here, on this grommet joint, where it goes into the switch housing. And on the DC04, that was a massive problem with these. If the cable was going to fail, it would usually be at this point here where it entered the cleaner. So later models, they used a different modified type of grommet on here, but this being one of the early models, it has the original type grommet. Okay. The cable is, I would have said, probably about 8 metres on this one. It's got a nice long distance between the two cable wraps, which means that you're not forever going like this with the cable on the back like with some cleaners now. It's what, 2 or 3, 4 turns on there and it's all wrapped up. It all fits on nicely. It was designed well. Absolutely fantastic cord wrap there. The tools you get on this one, again, it has all its tools, which is somewhat unusual now for a Dyson of this age, because most of them have been lost over the years or broken, or people have replaced them with the ones that aren't the right colour. But on this machine, they came with magenta crevice tool, twin colour on the dusting brush, and twin colour on the crevice tool. Okay, and they fitted onto the top of the bin nicely, which was a change to the DC01, where they all used to fit down here and they were prone to get knocked off. So that was actually a very good idea to mount them on top of the bin. We'll just put those back on. Okay, now the bin itself uses the same technology as the original Dyson DC01 Dual Cyclone, hence the term DC. That's where it comes from, Dual Cyclone. Why he calls these machines DC now, I don't know, because they're not Dual Cyclone anymore. There we go. Here we have the canister on the back. It has a suction relief valve in case there's a blockage anywhere that releases the pressure to the motor. Now this one was one of the first Dysons to use washable filters, reusable washable filters, because the DC01 you had to keep purchasing filters brand new, they weren't washable. And what Dyson did with this one was a fantastic idea. It would basically mean that you would buy the cleaner, and for much of the life of owning it, you would never ever, according to Dyson, have to purchase new filters. To get to the filter in this one, you press that button and it hinges up like that. That's a design now that many other manufacturers have copied. Here's the filter inside the top. Like I say, it's a very lightweight filter here. It consists of foam insert, which Dyson said that you should wash every 6 months, and the cage, again, more filter media here, and you wash that under the tap, let it all dry. I can't stress how much of a good idea I think that was. That was, you know, you paid a lot of money for the cleaners initially. They were more expensive than anything else on the market. Dyson has always been that way. I mean, it's not to the extent that it is now, where you need a second mortgage to buy a Dyson, but back then they were expensive, but that was a money-saving idea. He was under the premises that once you'd bought the cleaner, once you'd had the initial outlay on it, then there'd be nothing else to spend. And for the first few years, yeah, he was probably right. But when they get this old, they do get problems. Okay, now inside here, you can see the cyclone. It is a single cyclone in the middle, which is a large cone, which runs from the top all the way down here into the bottom, and all around the entrances to the cyclone inside here are little slits where the dust goes in and all spins round inside. Very, very simple, but very effective, these early ones. The filters didn't get too dirty on these. although they did, but it took a long time before you needed to keep cleaning them. That closes up. Now, on this one, it does not feature the drop-down base. That first appeared on the DC07, which was the replacement for this. So in order to empty one of these, you had to take off the top from the bottom. And that was very easy to do. And that you press that button, and that button as well, and the whole thing lifts out. Now you can see the cyclone cone, which runs from the top all the way down here and comes out at the bottom. So basically all the dust would fling around inside here, spin out of the airstream and drop out of this slit at the bottom. And it would then accumulate in this central part, so you'd effectively have the bin divided into two different sections that were sealed off from each other. Now, it's very important on these that these two chambers are sealed from each other, because if they weren't, the suction inside the cyclone compartment would then suck all the dirt in through that hole instead, and the cyclone wouldn't work. All that would happen is the dirt from the bottom of the bin would get sucked in through here and go straight to the top and straight into the filter. And I've lost count of the number of these DC04s that I've seen on eBay where people have lost the insert, which is this part here. Now, the design of these was that that was supposed to stay inside there securely, and when you went to the bin, you tipped it up to empty all the rubbish out. But they do, and they can, fall out. And people, without realising it, would end up throwing that part away with the rubbish. They'd empty the bin out, that part would fall out, and they wouldn't realise how important it was. And then they would take it back, and they would reassemble it. Like so. And put it back on the machine, like that. Now, that's a recipe for disaster. And the amount of them, like I say, that I've seen on eBay, which are missing that, is it's not good. Because all that will happen is, you'll suck the dirt in, it'll spin round inside here and then go straight at the bottom of that cyclone tube, bottom of the cone there, and all it'll do is completely clog the filter in no time at all. It'll effectively become like one of these cheap bagless cleaners which relies totally on a paper plated filter. It'll suck up for a while until the top filter in here clogs up, and then you'll lose all suction. So that is an important thing. If you're buying one of these on eBay, and they do appear an awful lot on eBay, make sure that it has that inside the bin. Okay. Now another thing that I've noticed that people seem to do is putting this in upside down inside here, like that, and then they'll go and put that back in. But the thing is, you see, is that it will let you assemble it that way, and that is not going to work properly either, because all that will happen is the dirt comes in and it'll all get trapped in this part here. You won't get any dirt going into the bottom because this is sealed. So again, that's not the way they go. This has to go in here, this way around, and pushed securely as hard as it'll go down into the bottom. And that is the correct assembly for the DC04 bin. So, like I say, if you're going to be buying one of these on eBay, make sure that this looks like this, that it has the correct insert in there, that the rubber's there, it's intact, because that rubber seal is important as well. No dirt is supposed to be able to get around that rubber seal, otherwise it'll find its way up the cyclone tube from the wrong way around. And that's what happened on the DC, I think it was the 17, which was an American Dyson. in that they had a problem with this rubber seal at the bottom. It pulled itself up and all the dirt was getting in from the bottom of the Cyclone, and it completely clogged all the Cyclones up. Dyson had to release a modification, but we don't have that problem here because we don't get the DC17. It was solely an American model. Okay, now we've talked about the bin. Underneath we have the famous Dyson Helix brush roll. Now these were fitted in this style to machines with the clutch. What the clutch does is simply disengages the drive from the brush roll according to the setting that you have it on here, on this knob. So what it was suitable for, Dyson say, was that you could use this on hard floors as well as carpet, because it has wheels, little rollers on the front of here, and the large wheels there, which enables it to run smoothly across laminates, any kind of hard floors, and that it would pick up just as well. Now what you would do to turn the brush roll off is you would operate the clutch control on the side here. This control has 3 settings. You can have it on the N setting here, which means that the brush roll is permanently off. If you had all hard floors in your house, that's what you'd have it on all the time. Basically then you wouldn't be using the brush roll, because all that would happen is the motor is connected to the clutch and it will just spin the clutch inside, but it wouldn't spin the brush roll. It's like having a gearbox on a car and having it in neutral, so you're spinning the gearbox but you aren't spinning the drive wheels. Okay, now if you were going to use it on a mixture of the two, or you wanted it on carpets, then what you would do is you would switch that switch to the middle setting, which on this one, I don't know whether I can get it up close enough to the camera to be able to see the things on here, but it has neutral, park and drive, which is like on an automatic transmission in a car. So neutral means that the brush will never go round, regardless of whether it's reclined or whatever. That brush roll is permanently off. Park means that the brush roll is off when the machine is in the upright position, when it's stood upright, so that you can use the tools and use the suction of the suction motor without having this spinning round on the bottom. Then what will happen on that position is that when you recline the machine, you put your foot on here, pull it backwards, and this goes down to drive. It's like an automatic function that as you recline the unit, the clutch moves into drive position, which then starts the brush roll spinning. So what it does, it uses 2 belts, one from the motor to the clutch, which spins an idler wheel in the clutch, and then you have another one that goes from the clutch to the brush roll, so that when it's in drive, the 2 sides of the clutch push up to each other, and just like a clutch in a car, when you pull the clutch up, you start enabling the drive to go through the wheels. Well, that's the same sort of thing. What it means is that Dyson didn't have to use 2 separate motors. Because in later models, you have a brush roll motor and you have a suction motor. But this was basically to stop him having to use a separate independent motor to control the brush roll. He could do it from the main suction motor using the clutch. It was a rather ingenious idea at the time, but as the cleaners get old, the belts on those clutches, what happens is they start to stretch, because they are not tough belts that you find on other types of machines. They're just simple rubber stretch belts, and the most prone one to stretching was the one that goes between the motor spindle of the suction motor to the clutch unit. And once that starts to stretch, what will happen is you'll be using it on the carpet and the brush roll will stop, or it'll start to spin slowly as the clutch slips on the spindle in here. So what Dyson say in that situation is that you're supposed to then have the clutch replaced. Now the clutches for these were about £20, and it wasn't an easy thing to do on your own. You know, you'd probably have to call a Dyson engineer out if you wanted to have the clutch replaced. I've done clutch replacements on these. You need a special torque screwdriver in order to take the bottom apart to get the clutch out, and it is quite fiddly unless you know what you're doing. So these, on a cleaner this old, if it's still got the original clutch in with the original drive belts, you're going to find that the brush roll itself will not be spinning to its full capacity and beating the carpet properly. Well, these don't beat the carpet anyway, that's another thing, but what you'll find is that it won't be as effective as it was when it was new, because these belts will be old and stretched. It is possible, again, if you know what you're doing, to replace the belt between the motor and the clutch. You do have to slightly disassemble the clutch to get to that belt, but it's a lot easier to replace that one than it is to replace the belt between the clutch and the brush roll. That is extremely difficult, and that requires a total strip down of the clutch, which I wouldn't recommend. So if the belt is loose between here and here, you will have to buy another clutch, basically. If it's this belt that's worn, you can buy the belt on its own, it's not too bad to do. But again, on a machine this old, it's likely that the clutch is going to be past its best. What happened when they were new is that if you stopped the brush roll or jammed it on something, or got a sock or anything caught inside here, this clutch would slip and it would make a terrible clattering noise to let you know that this brush roll was obstructed. The first time I heard it was on a DC07 when I had one when it was pretty new, back in about 2004, 2003, and I had the clutch model and I got something caught in here and it made the most atrocious noise. You know, it makes you really jump when that clutch slips, but it's designed to do that, to let you know the brush roll's obstructed. So there we go, that's how the clutch works. That's the pros and cons of the clutch unit. Some models of these did not come with a clutch. They were solely one drive belt between the spindle and the brush roll. And basically, Dyson said that those machines were solely for use on carpets. And later they became called the Origin models. And most of the models in each range would have an Origin, which means that you didn't have the clutch. Now I've got a DC07 upstairs, one with a clutch and one without a clutch. And I will probably be doing a review on the clutchless one, because I've already talked about clutches now on here. But sometime later on I will do a review on the DC07 Origin, which is, in my opinion, a more reliable machine, because you can very easily change the clutch, change the drive belt on the clutchless models yourself, and you can buy those belts very easily. Basically, all you need to do on them is to remove this part, and it'll give you access to the belt here, and you can just change it nice and easily. I mean, there's loads of videos on YouTube about how to change the belts on Dysons. I don't need to go into all that, because if you wanted to know, there's plenty around on YouTube. So the head is actually a floating head that moves freely back and forth like that to adjust to the undulations in the carpet. It says here that it's a self-adjusting head on the front, pivots on 2 axles to keep level with the floor on any carpet thickness. So basically it's a floating head. As you're pulling it back, moving it up and down, this floats on the carpet. Now, in my opinion, these are not deep cleaners. They will remove surface dust and they will remove cat hair quite well, dog hair, anything like that, not a problem. But the deep down grit, I don't think these are particularly good. The best machines for removing the really deep down dirt in the carpet has got to be a Kirby. You won't really get much better than a Kirby to do that. So, on the back here we have the hose and the wand. Now on the DC04 it removes by pressing this button here, as I'm sure most people know because these are so common now. You lift that and the hose comes away. Very, 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 very quick and easy. Then you can retract that up there and the thing falls off, and you can use it then, but you have to put a tool on the end of the hose. So, the end of the handle I should say. You can fix that on there and use that to do your higher places, and you getting your cobwebs off and going along the skirting boards and various low down places so you haven't got to keep bending down. Go all the way along here. What you could also do is to remove that completely, and the tools will fit straight onto the end of the cuff like that. Now this one, it actually has a button here that reduces the suction reduction button, which later models didn't have. And I know you didn't get this on the DC07, so I think that was a useful feature and they should have kept that, because a Dyson has fixed suction. It's always on maximum suction basically, and sometimes that's too much for certain things. If you want to adjust your curtains with it, you've got a full force of air going through here. That's one criticism with cyclonic cleaners, is that you can't adjust the motor power like you can on some bag machines, especially on the cylinders. So that's the hose. It will stretch quite a distance. As I've done in other videos here, we demonstrate just how much stretch you get on there. It's a fantastically long hose that will go all the way up the stairs. These hoses were troublesome when they got older because they did rip, usually around this area here, around the cuff. Being very pliable, very, very stretchy, they weren't all that resilient, and they did tear quite often. But this one has got its original hose and it's in original and good condition as well. So that's the hose. That then fits back down into the wand. And again, notice you have a metal wand on there. Very, very, very sturdy, very stable machine. It was made of ABS plastic. Now some people might not like ABS plastic because when it gets old, it gets brittle. If you leave these in a sunny place and don't keep them in the cupboard, what will happen is the sun will bleach out the plastic. It'll make it eggshell brittle, and it'll go all dull because the sunlight breaks down the ABS. So if you've got one of these, the best thing is to keep it in a dark cupboard. Okay. So we talked about the tools, showing you the hose. On the top of here, now that's supposed to be spring loaded, but the spring got lost, so unfortunately it isn't. That's just a cover to go over the top of here, because when the machine's turned on in the upright position, air is sucked in through here constantly. So they have a sort of a pressure cover on there to stop your hand getting hurt by it, because it can be quite sharp and dirty on there, so that's what that cover's for. So if we plug it in, now one other thing before I show you it working is Dyson. What he was famous for with these machines was putting on blockage ports, inspection ports. What he would do is to locate them at areas where they was most likely to get clogged. Now one of them was here, like that, and you could remove that, get your finger down in there to get blockages out, or make sure check up there. That incidentally is the changeover valve. what happens with that is that basically when it's in the upright position, that valve diverts all the suction from the motor, which comes through here, and then it diverts it up that tube and straight up the hose, so that when the machine's turned on in the upright position like this, all the suction will come through the top of here. You'll be able to feel that when the machine's turned on. The DC07 does it. Most subsequent Dysons which use that system all work like this. And basically, as you recline the machine, that changeover valve turns round and diverts the suction down a small pipe underneath here to the floor head. Very, very simple that, but effective. And when you put it back upright again, that turns around and diverts the suction back up the hose. Now you can also remove on these this pipe here, which I call the U-bend. So that pulled out like so. So basically anything heavy which got stuck down to it, I mean if you suck something like a pen up by mistake, something long, it will come down the hose and it will get trapped in here, because long things like pens won't be able to go around that U-bend, and you'll find it when you pull this out, it will drop out the bottom here along with all the other stuff that this traps, which I think is rather a good idea. I mean, Dyson, don't get me wrong, when in the early days it was very innovative, and the parts that the features he put on the machines were actually very useful, because if it wasn't for these early machines, Dyson would not be now what he is. Because people would have thought, you know, from the early models, how crap this is, and they wouldn't bother buying Dysons again. So, in the early days, he had to impress people. He had to produce machines that people wanted to buy. And this one is a damn good machine. So that would fit back on. Have I got it round the wrong way? For some reason, I can't get that back in. Oh yes I can, that's it. God, I am thick sometimes. There we go. On the underneath here you've got the rating plate. Now one of the things with Dysons is that most of them, they didn't have a date of manufacture on. So you never know how old a machine is. They can tell you, if you ring them up and give them the model number and the serial number, but on this one there is no date of manufacture. Some of the very early ones they did put a manufacture date on, but they stopped doing that quite quickly after. It's this one was made in Malmesbury in Wiltshire back in the good old days when Dyson used to actually design and produce his machines in this country, but unfortunately in 2002 he decided that he wanted more profit, and so he moved all the manufacturing off to Malaysia, where it's cheap to manufacture, and he still carried on putting his prices up. So as a consequence, Dyson is now a billionaire, a very, very rich man, thanks to all the people that have gone out and bought his products, and some people still buy them. I won't buy a new Dyson now, and I've said this in another Dyson video I've done. Whilst I love these old machines, I don't like the new ones. Not at all. They're not worth the money asked for. These would have been about £200 back in the day. Now, you're paying over £400. £400 for a plastic cleaner made in the Far East is far too much money. At least with these, they were all made in England. Which is what Dyson should be doing, really. Should be supporting his country. We have enough problems with unemployment in this country without shipping everything off to the Far East, just for the sake of greed. Right, so we turn the machine on, and this machine is, I believe, let's just have a look at the wattage on it here. Does it tell you what the wattage is underneath? Yes, it's a 1200 watts. So it's very modest in terms of power. And back in the day, in 1999, 1200 watts was about the going rate for vacuum cleaners before they all got silly and started using as much as an electric kettle. But again, that's another point. We turn the machine on with a switch here. Release that. And one of the things with this machine is it was very quiet. Compared to the DC07, this is a much quieter machine. The time. Now what you can hear on that is there is a slight clicking noise that's coming from the clutch. Now being the original clutch in here, you know, it's going to be fairly well worn now, but I did replace the clutch to motor drive belt on this, so it spins properly now and it picks up as it should do, because the original one was very well worn. But the clutch, it's a slightly clicky on this. Could do with a new clutch really, but there we have it. It still works at the moment. I don't use this machine very much anyway, because it's part of the collection and it sits upstairs in the dark to look nice for longer. This is a variation on Roger's famous bag of filth. I've decided now to put the filth in a tub. So that I can sprinkle it out onto the carpet easier. There we go, all that lovely muck. In there we've got all kinds of dust that I've collected from upstairs, from throughout the house. We've got pet hair in there, standard house dust, there's cat litter, all kinds of stones and various things that you'd expect to find rubbed all over your carpet. Because I know my cat, when she's in and out of that litter box, the amount of cat litter she can sometimes leave sprinkled on the carpet around here is something else. There's a couple of tea bags in here, so we've got tea, very fine dust, and it'll be interesting to see how this filters that out, or indeed whether it gets clogged up, because not all cleaners can cope with that amount of dirt on a carpet. I know Roger does them in his videos, and most of the cleaners he uses picks it up fairly well. So I'm going to find out now how well the DC04 does on all this. And this is liable to be rather noisy as it picks up the cat litter. If it picks the cat litter up, that is. every single time that crim stool always drops off. We can use it now to just pick up the remaining few pieces which have gone astray. Take out the upholstery brush. What you find is when you use the tools, that won't spin round, it will be stationary, so you won't be constantly beating away at the carpet there. It's very useful. So from that, I think you can see now why people were so impressed with the old Dysons. You know, this is how he got his bread and butter. It's these old models that made Dyson the company that it is. Because that is not a bad machine, and that's done a really good job on that carpet, considering this is now 15 years old, this machine. And that's still the original brush roll, and it's still the original clutch. The only part I've replaced on it has been the clutch to motor belt. That's it. When you look at that carpet, that looks clean. Now, I would imagine, to most other people, they would say that's done a wonderful job, because we've got no way of knowing what stuff is still deep down in that carpet. As far as Dyson was concerned, it would clean the top, it would clean the surface, and it would make the carpet look clean, which is all people normally want from a vacuum cleaner. Let's just put the hose back together. Now, back in the day, I didn't have one of these from brand new. My first Dyson I bought in 2000 and it was in the very early 2000s when I bought a DC07 purple and lime, brand new, and I used that one quite regularly and I was quite impressed. One of the problems with it was, pardon me, extreme noise. A coughing fit here. So, because the DC07 used rotate cyclones, which were inverted and goes upwards rather than downwards into the bin, like this one, the cyclone assembly was a lot noisier. And when I demo that, you'll see. And if you've ever used the DC07, you'll know what I mean. They are deafening. This was a pleasant machine to use. It wasn't too loud. It would do the job. 1200 watts was fine. If we just have a look inside the bin. Incidentally, just underneath here is a HEPA filter. Dyson say it was a lifetime filter, and once again my screwdriver's now disappeared again, so if I go and fetch that, here it is. I can show you what the filters were like on these. To get them off, you just need to pull this, and that would reveal a very black HEPA filter, like so. Very good quality there. It says Absolute HEPA Plus on there. all this would do is to absorb all the carbon dust from the motor and any subsequent dust that managed to escape from the Cyclone assembly through the pre-motor filter. But you could buy new ones of those, but Dyson said they were supposed to be permanent, lifetime filters, and they're not cheap to replace. You've got to buy a new one. So that fits back on there. And when you put your hand on top of here, it's warm, but it's not red hot like some of these modern cleaners that run on 2000 watts. 1200 watts on these were adequate. Absolutely adequate. Now, if you look at that there, I've just picked all that dust up. Not a single drop of dust has gone on that filter. And it's still as clean as it was before. You can see in here the dirt and the dust. That's the inlet tube that goes into the bin, and that's the outlet tube, and that is clean. That is how it should be. Dirty, clean, because that's the air that goes down to the motor. That's why this filter is very important that you always have this in. And there we go. You can see all that dust nicely deposited in the bin, so that machine has done a fantastic job. I would rate this machine. It's very difficult giving vacuum cleaners ratings. There are so many factors to think about, but I've only given 2 or 3 machines ever a 10 out of 10 rating. This does not get a 10 out of 10. I would give this 8 out of 10. It's not a bad machine at all. So there we go. Dyson DC04, one of Dyson's early machines, very successful, very reliable, but now they are getting very old and long in the tooth, so the examples now that are left, I'm afraid a lot of them don't look in as wonderful condition as this anymore, because I tend to keep this upstairs now in a darkened room, or even in the loft, because I want to preserve this. Being the limited edition as well, they made less in this colour than they did in the standard colours. So, yeah, 8 out of 10, very good vacuum. Until then, until next time, I'll say goodbye.